Welcome back everyone. It's been a few weeks since I've been able to pop on here with the end of summer and the preparing of work and school. It's been a pretty crazy few weeks, and if you're new here, welcome. Hope you join. This is a channel where we share all the beautiful food, gardening, and everything that we can do to build a simple and spiritually centered life at home. Though I am about to get back in the swing of things with work, it is still harvest season, so you see this is a whole bunch of basil that I do have to prepare. I'm not going to use all of this. Obviously, this is not something that I can put to use right now, so a lot of these leaves are going to be washed and pruned and frozen in the freezer so that I can use it in upcoming meals for the next few seasons. And I always have a bag of frozen basil to use in any meals that we have. The first thing up is this carrot top pesto, which you can really use any sort of greens. This time I've had some random carrots that I was able to grow this summer, which is interesting because carrots are usually a fall and winter crop, and I use the greens because the greens are full of nutrients and why put them to waste. So I blended them with some fresh basil this time, but again, this just goes to show you can make pesto out of any greens that you have. Winter variations can be based with spinach, kale, anything that you have, but the rest of it remains the same. So whatever greens, this is carrot tops and the basil, and lots of garlic. And then you just add olive oil, salt, pepper, some grated cheese in the quantities that you like. And there's so many different recipes out there, but they all kind of have different amounts. And for me, I like a little bit more on the oily side and a little bit less on the salty side. I don't use any nuts, so what you see here is exactly what is going to be tossed with our pasta very soon. I do go slowly, which means that I add a little bit of oil, a little bit of lemon juice like you see, just for some brightness, and I just go until it gets to the consistency that I like. You can taste it every now and then. I do several tastings, you should too, and you just make sure that it's thick enough to coat whatever pasta you're going to cook, but it's also fresh, zesty, tangy, whichever way you like it to be made, that's what you want to do. So with this pasta is going to be some shrimp tossed with more garlic and more olive oil. As you can tell, this is not just a solitary meal. Pasta with pesto could be its own bowl for lunch, but for bigger meals like dinner, especially on any days that we're choosing to fast a bit, especially on our Fridays, this is a typical meal. Once the garlic gets warm in the oil, and I try to warm it with the oil so it doesn't burn too much, it's just a matter of tossing in the shrimp and cooking it until it's done. You can use any kind of pasta with this, and for my family we need about 2 pounds, and what that is everyone gets a nice big bowl and we have leftovers for the next day. Especially during the work week, this is a meal and a half, and it takes care of us for the dinner that night and for lunch for 3 girls and myself. And so you're just using your time wisely and making sure that you're making enough to cover all of your bases. Once this is spread on the bottom of the bowl, this gets tossed, and any extra sauce I use for breakfast, for eggs, for bread, anything that we can use a spread for. This pesto sauce can be used in so many different ways, but for this particular dinner, it's everybody's favorite. And so while I'm tossing this pasta in this big bowl, everyone just cannot wait for their dinner. So piling it up, adding some shrimp, and that'll be tonight. So besides some laundry getting done and getting some things out of the way in the kitchen, another quick meal that I'm putting together is this cauliflower and peas that's going to be tossed with, yes, more pasta, and that goes with a London broil that I'll show you how I make, and I make often. So this big cast iron skillet that you see my daughter tossing some onions in is one of these things that I like to use because I cook in it and I serve in it, and it's used for so many items. If you don't have a good cast iron skillet, it's really a good investment, and the bigger it is, the better it is. I only have one, so just let me remind you, you just need one really good pan. So this cauliflower I picked up at the market. Cauliflower and broccoli, these are not the items I grow in my yard. I've tried, I've failed, I've given up. It's one of those things where I will leave it to more professional farmers to grow, but when it is in season, I do get it, and we do enjoy it in these light sauces that we like to toss with some pasta. It's beautiful roasted, it's beautiful in the skillet, and in the summer, this is just the way we like our vegetables. So lots of oil, lots of garlic, salt and pepper, and also tossed with some peas. I use frozen peas almost exclusively. I do grow snap peas, but we like to just eat them right off the vine, so it's not necessarily something we cook with. And this is a just fresh summer type vegetable mixture that with the pasta will become a beautiful bed for other items that we like to eat. So in my last video, if you saw it, you may have seen me making this London broil. I actually buy a lot of my meat in bulk, whether it's from Costco or family packs at the market, and this was one of them. So this is the frozen London broil that I had prepared in the marinade already, and I just popped it out, defrosted it, and put it in the air fryer. And while the air fryer is going, in the pasta we go. So again, it's 2 pounds. And then once the pasta is done, it gets tossed with the cauliflower and peas, and then the air fryer would be done by then, and the London broil is just gonna sit and set, and once it's sliced, it becomes a very beautiful, succulent dinner. I did use some of the leftover pesto from the earlier meal for the pasta just to add extra flavor, because once the vegetables are on top, cauliflower takes on the flavor of anything else that it's next to, so it'll be a nice way of flavoring the vegetables from the pasta without necessarily adding more seasoning on top of more seasoning. The thing about London broil is that it becomes such a nice steak when it's actually a really cheap cut of meat. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like it. It takes a lot of marinating for it to become tender, and you really have to get it at the sweet point where it doesn't get too cooked, because otherwise it'll get really dry. And that's where the air fryer, I feel, does a really good job, because it's almost impossible to dry out a London broil in the air fryer like it would be in the oven. So with this being a typical weeknight meal, what you have here is a good protein, some pasta, sometimes we have rice, and vegetables. And it's your basic way of putting food on the table, making sure everyone's getting what they need. And it helps you just settle in at the end of the day. It's nothing too crazy. It's not one of these big feasts, but it is just as important, because it's when you are together at night, in the moment, just making sure that you're enjoying your food, feeding your body, and feeding your soul with the people that you have next to you. So with the greens that I just harvested, I'll be making an Assumpta salad. Assumpta meaning the Feast of the Assumption. And on this feast day, you'll have tomatoes from the garden, olives, these greens, nice and fresh, freshly harvested. And it's just a way of celebrating the Feast of the Assumption where Mary is assumed into heaven. And a lot of the fresh harvests is usually in honor of Mary, in honor of the Holy Family, because it's that purity, it's that freshness, it's the way that the vegetables sustain you, which just kind of reminds you of the only thing you need to sustain yourself is your faith and your family around you. So look how quickly this is put together. It's beautiful. It's also a way of making sure you're using up what you're growing if you are growing a vegetable garden. And in the month of August, it's a beautiful way of celebrating the Feast of the Assumption. So this is a third pasta dish, and you'll see that this will be tossed with summer squash and garlic and onion again. This will be something that will be served with some roasted salmon on the side. Again, we had this on a Friday night. It's just a light way of enjoying a summer dinner using the produce that we have available and in season. Do I grow my own summer squash? Not anymore. I have lost the battle to the squash bugs, and so I do grow only one type of squash, which is the trombosino squash, otherwise known as gogotsa, because it grows on a vine that seems to be resistant to squash bugs. So when I find these yellow summer squash or zucchini in the market and it's fresh and they just look good, I do get them and I do try and cook with them right away. And to preserve their flavor as naturally as possible, I do like to lightly saute them in a pan with some garlic and oil, salt and pepper. I toss it with peas like I just did in the other meal that I showed you previously, because peas are quintessentially summer, right? I mean, they're just easy to cook and they're bright and slightly crunchy. It makes the kids really happy. So this will be tossed with some pasta while I get ahead on the roasted salmon. So this salmon is wild salmon. It has the skin on one side, which helps it roast a little bit better. And I will put this in the oven, even though you could put it in the air fryer or cook it in a skillet. And the trick to roasted salmon is to really salt it more than you think. I think people shy away from salting fish because they think it's already salty enough since it comes from, salty water, but you really do need to salt it more than you think. The herbs that we like to put on top are some oregano, some garlic herb mixture, and again a slug of olive oil. Once that goes in the oven, it's just a matter of a few minutes before they're ready, and then dinner is done for this easy weeknight meal. So this past weekend, I did want to make some tortellini soup because I did have the tomatoes from the can that I wanted to use, and I did have a bag of frozen tortellini that I got that was on sale. Tortellini is a pasta you can make fresh at home. It's so much fun to do. You could also buy it freshly made from your local bakery, or if you have what we would call a latticini or an A&S pork store, one of those Italian import food stores. If you know what I mean, you know you can go into the refrigerator in the back of their store and pick up a fresh pack of pasta. But frozen tortellini it is. We usually buy the cheese ones, and we make a sauce like we would for pasta, but then thin it out with some extra water that we just swivel in the can just to get that extra tomato out of the can. Then season it like you would for any other sauce and add in some chicken stock or bouillon just to make it into more of a soupy flavor profile. Then once it's boiling, you just simply add in the tortellini, and that becomes a very nice lunch. And if you have children who just love this type of food, it reminds them of, just cozy home. This is something that'll make everybody happy. It's good for Saturday afternoon. It's good for Sunday right after Mass while you're waiting for your larger meal to cook. It's good for weeknights too, when you just want to get something in, but also nutritious and also flavorful. So always make tortellini soup. It's a good way of using up what you have, and it's a really good emergency meal. So on the weekends, I still wake up early. It seems the older I get, the more easily I do wake up early. I don't know about you, but I don't really want to waste a lot of time when I'm just up and about early in the morning. And so I do utilize the time to bake what I had plans to bake for the weekend. It's quiet, it's before the kids are getting up. And for this weekend, I was making these blueberry and peach galettes, which is basically puff pastry wrapped around sugared blueberries and sugared peaches that are baked in the oven, and it becomes like this open-faced pie almost. A galette is a French version of a tart, and with puff pastry it's just as easy as just piling everything on. Obviously I have to make some coffee because waking up is still something that I have to do on the weekend. And I like to use this French press to froth the milk. I did use an automatic frother, but gosh, those things just become broken so fast. But this French press, as long as you have the parts, it'll never fail. So I use this to froth the milk. In the mug it goes. The coffee goes on top, and I'm ready to make these galettes. So what we're going to do here is wash the fruit, peel the peaches, cut the peaches, and then in the individual bowls just toss them with the sugar, just to make sure that everything is coated and that as they bake they caramelize a bit and they become like almost jammy. So it heightens the sweetness, and it's also a way of preserving the fruit so that the galettes you can enjoy now, you can refrigerate it and enjoy it later. You can also warm it up and it still becomes sweet no matter how you enjoy it. So once these peaches get cut up and the blueberries are in the bowl, you'll see how I make them, and it's a very simple process. So the amount of sugar you add is up to your preference. You could add a lot, you could add a little bit. It's just enough just to coat them. The sugar really helps the natural sugars in the fruit cook better, in my opinion. And a little bit of cornstarch just to make sure that the fruit melds together. While it bakes, the cornstarch and the sugar will combine and it'll help make that jammy texture I was talking about. With fruit, I always add some lemon zest because lemon just brings up the flavor and makes it brighter, especially in these summer treats like this galette I'm making. You have to add the lemon. It's just one of those things that without it, it still tastes good, but it's just not as good. Adding some lemon juice also brings everything together and allows the fruit to really taste the way it's supposed to taste. Nice and sweet, tangy, bright, and just really, really, really good. So folding the puff pastry might take a little bit of work. You will need to flatten it out a bit. You might need to push the fruit on top of it a little bit. It's just a matter of making sure it all just comes in one big circle. So do what you have to do to make sure that the puff pastry just comes over the edge a little bit. Once the fruit bakes, it might seep out a little bit. The juice might come out and through the cracks in the puff pastry, but that's okay because this is not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to be good. So you could serve this warm like I did, where it all falls apart, or you could wait for it to set and serve it up in slices. Either way, I want to thank you for joining me for this week of cooking, and I hope you have a beautiful week ahead. God bless, and stay safe.